old. Now, the college football transfer portal reopens tomorrow. We mentioned that. Chris Hummer put out a list, and we'll go through them a little bit by little bit with both Craig and Paul dialogue on this as well. The team that could define the transfer portal. He says Alabama. One, they had a lot of players move on, and some of them, as we've been told, were going to move on anyway. The Nick Saban retirement, some spread out throughout the country. Some went to other schools that are a part of the national championship picture. But this now, with they finishing up spring football, they could be the one, depending on how, I guess, locked in they get, vice versa, define what the cycle might look like. Because if they want you, that's going to be hard to turn them down.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be, I think Alabama defining the cycle is going to be very interesting because it'll show what kind of juice Kalen DeBoer has already, what kind of juice the program still has. I mean, Nick Saban still has an office in the building, so even though he's not going to be coaching there, he's still going to be around. So that's going to be interesting. Washington does have a lot to do. But
we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah.
But I definitely do think that that they will have some ability to call up those guys who are in the portal and be like, I know you've looked at these other places, but Alabama.
Yeah, even with Proctor coming in from Iowa, they still need offensive line, multiple players. He said Alabama needs a tight end, another receiver, and might even need some movement within the quarterback room, even though they, of course, have Jalen Milroe coming back.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up UCF a second ago in regards to our newest that was the following. There was the note on
Steve Sloan.
Yeah, Steve Sloan. I was going to say in the transfer portal, I just saw Mikey Keene, quarterback, UCF, has entered the transfer portal. It's not the biggest splash.
Well, he was
but
at Fresno State last year.
That's right.
Timmy McClain.
I'm thinking of Tim. Yeah.
Timmy
okay.
McClain. Yeah.
So that's one note passing along that I just saw come down. It seems like a plethora of those starting to emerge now. But yeah, I mean, Alabama makes sense. They're the biggest of the big dogs. They've got a new coach, so there's a lot of movement going on right now, and he's going to want to put his own fingerprints on that. And they are always a team that has to replace a lot of talent, even if there isn't a coaching shakeup because of the NFL draft.
Absolutely.
So I just think that they're facing an influx roster more than they've experienced in quite a while because you add on the typical attrition and then you tack on having a new coach and what that brings. So, yeah, I would expect Alabama is really looking to retool that roster or reload it, but also set up for this new era and Kalen DeBoer as best as they possibly can because they don't want to slip and the expectations are as high for them as anybody. But, I'd imagine they're going to be very involved over these next few days and weeks.
Was anyone hurt more than Washington? Alabama had some departures. Everybody's going to have some. Washington added 15 players during the winter window of the portal, including Will Rogers from Mississippi State. But they have 22 starters that pretty much obliterated their first team on both offense and defense. So they returned 3 starters this spring, all on defense. That amazing, dynamic, do whatever they usually wanted until they got in the championship game. Offense will have a lot to fix. 15 players added, but they will jetfish very aggressive when it comes to the portal.
It's going to have to be, well, look, they were going to get killed by graduation no matter what. Like that was going to happen to them. And they were going to get killed by the draft no matter what, because when you have 3 guys who are going to get picked in the top 60 picks at wide receiver alone, that's going to decimate your roster. Not to mention 2 offensive linemen in the top 60, maybe 3, a defensive end in the top 60, a defensive back in the top 60. So they're going to have a lot of really early picks in the draft. The quarterback, of course, and Michael Penix, who will be up there. So, they're going to have a lot of rebuilding to do, or they're just going to have to go through with a young team and jetfish. But most people don't do that anymore.
Watch the draft. You'll see why Washington has the most work to do of any top 25 team. You're going to see a boatload of guys from the purple and gold with the great run that they had. Roma Dunze, can't wait to see where he lands, him in particular. I don't know. I like the guy a lot and just really fell for watching him play the past couple of years. I'm excited about that. But certainly they had a great run, but with great runs typically come a lot of attrition unless you just happen to hit it right when everybody's kind of hitting their junior years and you have like a 2-year window. But even that's harder to do nowadays because you don't know who you're going to have. So they had a massively successful season, but a lot of guys heading off to the NFL or the portal, what have you. So Washington's a fascinating case of trying to rebuild and see how effective they can do that in just a few months' time.
Most of the time, other than quarterback, the most in-demand position is you just cannot get enough of what you call the dogs inside on defense, the defensive tackle position. Big bodies. Texas had 2 great tackles, but they also had depth there behind Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. A&M, Texas, among others you brought up. LSU needs some big bodies inside. Baylor, their defensive line has been hurt with attrition, retirement, and or injuries. And so that is one. Even Georgia, as mentioned by Chris in the article, needs defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen. You never have enough, even if you have a lot. So that's a position that needs in most demand. Also, the least in demand. Well, now that pretty much the portal's run its course and already have had the offseason, the quarterback position. Quarterback position, although you might see some teams. Here's part of the notes he mentioned. Other than some schools who need a starter, Northwestern does. Iowa, Texas Tech, Georgia, UCLA looking for possible experience behind who they have is right now number 1 on their depth chart. But pretty much he thinks this will be a quiet quarterback cycle that will start in the portal tomorrow.
Well, there's going to be some people that jump in, but the way quarterback works is you're at a disadvantage going anywhere if you're not there in the spring.
Yeah.
So you need
Unless
those
you're coming
reps.
off
You
an
have to
energy,
build
even
it.
then, yeah.
Yeah, and so they have to get those those reps in, learn the new offense and all that. So I'm sure there'll be some moving around, but I would think most of the quarterback movement will be I lost a job here. I'm not going to be the starter at a school. Maybe I'm going to go be the backup at a place where I can maybe win the national title. So,
yeah, I mean, I just incorrectly mentioned Mikey Keenan, meant Timmy McClain. So there's a guy who has entered, but I don't know. Yeah, what are going to be his options? I don't think Ohio State's coming calling, and I throw them out there. I know they already made their big transfer move back in December, but I think most of the schools have kind of addressed that at this point. Certainly, if some big names pop in there, that could shake some things up. But I feel like right after the season is when most people kind of went and grabbed their big quarterback. So. We'll see. But there's a lot of springs that have already ended, guys. Like, it's not just everybody's on the same timeline. So there were spring games this past weekend. There were some the weekend before. So there's been a lot of springs that have already ended. And yeah, I just think it's interesting though to see quarterback as the least in demand. But I guess it's so easy to go and grab a guy when you don't have one now that if all the top guys get taken pretty quick, and that leaves the guys who weren't the top guys to begin with. And so how much of a demand is there for them? I'm interested to see what a market looks like for Arkansas. Jacoby Criswell enters. Like, what's the market for guys like that, and Timmy McClain and so forth. But I'm curious if there's a big fish that we just don't know about.
Absolutely, that's the one thing that could maybe change that topic at that position.
And it's not going to be Arch Manning.
No,
I know that it's not going to be him. But is there another guy who we're not thinking of that was a big time recruit?
Or was told recently that they're not going to be the number 1 guy.
Right.
Yeah.
That decides to jump in starting tomorrow. That's what could shake things up there.
Who could jumpstart the quarterback market? Michigan.
There you go.
There we are with that. That might be one that maybe they nibble with somebody else somewhere else, and maybe that jumpstarts a little bit of a domino effect. But right now with McCarthy getting a lot of rave reviews on how fast he might go in the NFL draft, because quarterbacks always go higher than most of the time, you think. But there they are with Michigan and the quarterback market. They could give that thing a jolt of lightning. Position with most of the bigger names, running back. People love skill position anyway. You have, by the way, Damian Martinez in the portal. That by himself. Quinshawn Junkins, of course, already gone. And Mississippi trying to maybe look at, okay, what are we going to do there? Even if they have running backs, they still might want more. But the Damian Martinez is one that will jumpstart the names. Ole Miss and Miami still looking, no matter what, to add maybe an upper echelon running back name, according to Chris Hummer from CBS Sports.
Damian Martinez is there, and his phone probably has not stopped ringing since he said he was going to enter the portal by any team that needs a running back. And that's a position that's more valuable in college right now than it is in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think the NFL is wrong about it, I think they need to kind of adjust what they look for a little bit more. I think sometimes you get a little tunnel vision.
Kansas City just won without a good name. But they have a guy named Patrick Mahomes.
But they also have Pacheco, they could run the offense through him very easily.
Yeah,
he's a good. Pacheco's really good, but like they also have Patrick freaking Mahomes.
That offsets what you may need.
Like that kind of makes up for a little bit there. You don't really need prime Emmitt Smith back there to help your offense move along.
They would take him though. They would take prime.
Of course
Emmitt
they
Smith
would.
if they could. Team with the biggest potential to make a splash, Miami. Paul, you always study the Hurricanes because of the rivalry with FSU. They went all in on Cam Ward during the window. They still need help, but maybe they will find another alpha or two to add to their roster. They have the elite quarterback, elite offensive lineman, a pair of excellent receiving options, but expected to pursue a top-tier running back and maybe yet another receiver to match up with Cam Ward at quarterback.
I would think the dude from Penn State today.
I saw that,
who's in the portal, who's their leading receiver, and his name escapes me at the moment, even though I had just looked at it like 30 minutes ago. I would think that Miami's calling him right now because, look, they've got a year of Cam Ward, and then nothing after that is guaranteed for them and Mario Cristobal at the quarterback position. So this is a huge, huge thing with Cam Ward to win with a guy who is very talented and very good, but hasn't been all that successful as far as W's go at the college level.
Right.
I mean, when it comes to Washington State, he wasn't in a bowl game last year. Now that's not all on him, but he's got an opportunity here at Miami. They do need to add a running back. They need to add a wide receiver. They added that 75th year tight end, which is not going to help him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them try to add at that position either. But they've got Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo, who are really good receivers. Adding a third one and a running back who can take a lot of pressure off of Cam Ward would be huge for a Miami team that has been not relevant in the ACC in a long time and trying to get that jolt under Mario Cristobal. Offensive line, defensive line, really, really good. So there's really not much they need to do to try to take a step forward, but they really do need to make, maybe another move or two.
Yeah, Keandre Lambert-Smith's the Penn State wide receiver that's hit the portal.
The conference that is most upset, the SEC.
Well, you can't transfer and not sit
there
out.
You go. You cannot. And for example, UT, Texas, now that they'll be a part of the conference, they cannot add some of the names like what they've had in A.D. Mitchell, Isaiah Bond, among others. That now is no longer available to them because they've done a really good job of not just getting players, but players who made a difference. The tight end from Alabama never really did, that they picked up a couple of years ago, but they can get into the portal. They cannot eat from their own conference.
Well, Texas and Oklahoma can until June. Right? Because they're not in the SEC yet.
I have not looked into that at all, but I would imagine that they're.
Well, they've already got Isaiah Bond. He hasn't.
Right. I would imagine that they're free because it's not officially SEC just yet until this summer. So, I would imagine they might be exempt from that, but I don't know that to be certain. But that would make sense that they would be, given that, again, they're not in the SEC right now.
And they've already gotten Isaiah Bond.
Right.
So, if that was about next year, what does it matter when they get Isaiah Bond? If Isaiah Bond is never going to play a Big 12 game, if he's going to play an SEC game, he would have to sit out since they're going to the SEC. But they might be standing in a loophole right now.
Yeah, let me. There was a nugget that he put inside that article. It was an asterisk, and I'll go in there to see what he said. But again, that window's closing no matter what.
Otherwise, Isaiah Bond might as well go back to Alabama because he's not going to play next year if that rule applied to him.
SEC players in the last couple of cycles has made a portal killing with SEC no longer allowed to shop at Greg Sankey's store.
Okay, interconference transfer rules apply to Oklahoma, Texas ahead of spring window. Now, Paul, Isaiah Bond transferred in December, or he transferred in that last go-around, so that's why he would be exempt from that. But I just looked it up in 247, did have an article from just 3 days ago that said any outgoing OU and Texas players who enter the portal will not be immediately eligible if they transfer to an SEC school, according to a spokesperson from the conference. So, Yeah, so that last window was from December 4th to January 2nd. That's why Isaiah Bond, I guess, would be exempt from that. But yeah, that's interesting to know.
But my question still remains. Like, I get why they're not doing the spring window, and that's good to enforce the rule. But Isaiah Bond transferred from Alabama to Texas after both their seasons were over, and Texas was no longer going to play a game in the Big 12. So it feels like this is something they maybe noticed after that happened.
Well, it might be a semester thing or not.
Well, I think it's like the springs when it starts.
Yeah.
He's
not
enrolling in the spring.
Last time that they did it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
By the way, Tyrese Hunter just entered the transfer portal, UT's point guard. So that's
Iowa
from
State
Jeff.
fans laughing it up.
He left from Iowa State, went to UT. That's from Jeff Goodwin with that note right there. And then the team that could surprise, former Oklahoma offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. They need a lot. They have some needs. Running back may surprise some people being in the mix based on what Chris Hummer's hearing when the portal, of course, opens tomorrow to try to keep up with the Joneses in, of course, the state of Mississippi with what Ole Miss and also Lane Kiffin have done.
I'm very curious to see how Jeff Lebby does there in Starkville, especially in this new SEC where there's two teams who are jumping into the fray that are, head and shoulders above you in pretty much every category football-wise. So he's got a tough road ahead of him. Obviously, with the transfer portal, they could go make a bunch of big splashes like their in-state brethren Ole Miss has and, speed up the process to getting where they want to be. So thank goodness for that. But, yeah, just in general, I mean, the place where Mississippi State finds itself, a new coach, and how he does as a first-time coach, I'm fascinated by how the Bulldogs look this year and just in general with Lebby and what kind of a talent they can attract. Like, they're going to have the benefits of having more money than a lot of schools and more exposure than a lot of schools. But do you sort of, like, what happens to those lower-level SEC schools? Do they sort of get lost in the shuffle, or is, it's still possible to be right there in the mix? And if so, how quickly can Jeff Lebby get them back into that mix? Yeah, that's an interesting story for sure out of the Southeastern Conference.
All right, when we come back.